Hello, hello friends. This is Girish.M.V, the YouTuber of Southwest Aviation. So today we'll be learning about one of the most awesome planes in the world. That's the Havilland Comet. The Havilland Comet. So before I start, I have to tell you something. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And also don't forget to click on the bell icon so I get notified when I post a video. So let's begin. The de Havilland Comet's full name was the de Havilland DH-106 Comet. It was actually the world's first commercial jet airliner. It was developed by de Havilland at its Havilland Aerodrome in Hertfordshire, United Kingdom. The first Comet 1, which was a prototype, flew in 1949. The prototype featured an aerodynamically clean design with four de Havilland Ghost turbojet engines buried in the wing roots. It also had a pressurized cabin and large square windows. For the era, in that time, it offered a relatively quiet, comfortable passenger cabin and was commercially promising at its debut in 1952. However, that wasn't entirely the case, since just a year later, problems started to emerge. So, what was the problem? 3 Comet 1s crashed. They actually suffered catastrophic in-flight breakouts, clear doing. 2 of these were found to be caused by structural failure from metal fatigue in the airframe. This phenomenon was not fully understood at the time. However, the 3rd crash was found due to overstressing of the airframe during flight through severe weather. As a result, the Comet was withdrawn from service and extensively tested. Design and construction flaws, including improper riveting and dangerous concentration of stress around some of the square windows, were ultimately identified. Now, what happened next was not very good. The Comet was extensively redesigned with oval windows, structural improvements, and other changes. So the grounding of the Comet lasted over 4 years. For additional information, the Comet rival manufacturers took their lessons so they could make better jetliners instead. The Comet had 4 variants: Comet 1, 2, 3, and 4. Although sales never fully recovered as mentioned here, the improved Comet 2 and prototype Comet 3 culminated in the redesigned Comet 4 series, which debuted in 1958 and remained in commercial service until 1981. The Comet was also adapted for a variety of military roles used as a return platform. The world's first jetliner was retired in 1997. However, the improved military version of the de Havilland Comet 1, known as the Hawker Nearmod, remained in service until 2011 with the Royal Air Force, over 60 years after the Comet's first flight. So that was a few information about the de Havilland Comet 1. Well, let's dive in to the main topic of this video, which is which airlines operated the de Havilland Comet and which did not. Before we start, I have to say something. If you want to see the same video in Hindi, I already have a video in my second channel, that is Southwest Aviation in Hindi. I'll be posting a link down below, so please be sure to subscribe to my other channel. So there were various operators of the first, since there were only 114 of these types built. Many had like 1, 2, or 3 aircraft, unlike today's planes. Like there are like 5 or 6 in services. Since this is because in the early 1950s, you may see airlines in countries that do not exist. In the case, I will say how much. First, starting off, so we'll go alphabetically. Our first country on our list is Argentina. The country of Aerolíneas Argentinas had ordered a total of 6 Comet 4s in 1958, and they were delivered throughout 1959 and 1960. The service introduction was on the 16th of April 1959. The first flight took place between Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, and Santiago, the capital of Chile. And to be sure, Aerolíneas Argentinas is actually the flag-carrying airline of Argentina. If you don't know what flag carrier is, I'll be explaining to you in my next video. A total of 3 aircraft during service with Aerolíneas Argentinas crashed. As a result, a replacement Comet 4C was brought in 1962. The aircraft was moved from international flights to domestic flights in 1966, and the survivors were retired and sold to Danair in 1971. Next, we have Australia, the current flag carrier of the country known as Qantas Empire Airways at the time. The flag carrier, what I was selling was the flag carrier of Australia, known as Qantas Empire Airways at the time, held leased 7 different Comet 4s in the early 1960s. Qantas used this mainly to serve the Sydney to Singapore route. You might know Qantas Empire Airways as just Qantas as the brand name, so I just want to clarify that thing. Next, moving on to Canada, the defunct Canadian airline, known as Canadian Pacific Airlines, ultimately had not in operation. It had actually ordered 2 of them. One of the Comet 1As was actually finished. However, it crashed during the delivery, and the other was cancelled. Next, we have the Central African Federation, which contains several countries of today, which I don't know, also known as Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. The airline which operated was another defunct airline, known as Central African Airways. It operated weekly services from Salisbury to London using wet-leased Boeing Comets in the early 1960s, like most other airlines. So Central African Airlines didn't use the aircraft for long, since it was dissolved in 1967. Next, we have the East African Community, which consists of present-day Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. This one was actually an alliance formed. Like Central African Airways, East African Airways isn't active as it was dissolved in 1977 and broke up into the country's flag carriers. Okay, for additional information, Uganda's current flag carrier is Ugandan Airlines, Kenya's is famous Kenya Airways, and Tanzania's small flag carrier is Air Tanzania. Okay, now let's continue with the video. East African Airways acquired a total of 3 Comet 4s in 1960 and 1962 and operated them on services to Europe for the next decade. A 4th additional Comet 4 was started from Boeing and Danair during 1965 and 1966. In addition, also there were an additional three short-term charters during 1970 and 1971. By now, they weren't. By now, they weren't flying to Europe. Instead, they were being used for inter-African services. Next, we have Ecuador. One of Ecuador's airline, known as Air Ecuador, had a single Comet 4 delivered in 1966. The aircraft was mainly used for services between Quito, the capital of Ecuador, and Miami. After being used for 2 years, the aircraft was impounded in Miami and remained under legal custody. The aircraft was scrapped in 1978. Our next country is Egypt. We're going really quick, so if you don't quit, be sure to check out my video on the other. One of Egypt's airline, known as Misrair, had a total of 2 new Comet 4Cs and delivered in 1960. At that moment, it changed its name from Misrair to United Arab Airlines in the same year. This renamed airline took delivery of another 7 Comet 4Cs over the course of the 1960s. United Arab Airlines further changed into Egypt Air in 1971. As many of you might know, Egypt Air is the current flag carrier of Egypt. With United Arab Airlines being transformed into Egypt Air in 1971, 4 of these aircraft were owned by a new airline. However, they were all sold off over the course of the 1970s. So here's an image of few Olympic Airways Comet 4 at Paris in 1963. Now we haven't discussed Olympic Airways yet, so we'll tell which Olympic Airways. So the next we have France. We have not one but two airlines in this country which operate aircraft. The first one was one of the most famous airlines and also one of the largest airlines in the present day. So this is one of the three comets operated by Air France. It was seen at the Hartfield factory in 1953. So Air France actually operated three new Comet 1As. However, this was only briefly in the 1950s before they were withdrawn. The second airline was Union Aero Maritime Transport. Just like Air France, it also operated three Comet 1As briefly in the 1950s. One of them crashed, and the other two were withdrawn from service. So this is actually Air France's Comet. Next, we have Greece. So you're questioning yourself, which is Olympic Airways. Olympic Airways was actually the first flag carrier of Greece. And in present day, the flag carrier of Greece is Aegean Airlines. Now returning to Olympic Airways, it had a total of 4 new Comet 4Bs delivered in 1960. It was operated in a pooling agreement with BA, or British European Airways, one of the airlines. Next, we have Kuwait. So, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have many airlines which operated this thing, because it was only the beginning at the time, beginning of aviation, very early stages of aviation. Kuwait's current day flag carrier, Kuwait Airways, operated one second-hand Comet 4, and that was along with 2 new Comet 4Cs in the 1960s. Okay. Our next airline is Lebanon. Lebanon's flag carrier, Middle East Airlines, operated a few Comet 4s. I don't know how many is there because I checked on the Wikipedia page on it. Just said they have one Comet 1, so I really don't know how much planes this Middle East Airlines had. However, it's confirmed that it did operate the plane. And our next country is Malaysia. Malaysian Airways operated a total of 5 second-hand Comet 4s. The airline became Malaysia Singapore Airlines in 1966. Malaysia Singapore Airlines, and now that airline, which is Malaysia Singapore Airlines, inherited 5 Comet 4s from Malaysian Airlines in 1966 and 2 more Comet 4s in 1967 and 1968. All of them were sold to Dan Air London in 1969. Now, Malaysia Singapore Airlines was not only the flag carrier of Malaysia, but also the flag carrier of Singapore. Malaysia Singapore Airlines is defunct today since it just broke up into Malaysian Airlines Systems and Singapore Airlines, the 2 current flag carriers of Malaysia and Singapore respectively. Next, we have Mexico. Just like Middle East Airlines, it's not mentioned how many aircraft this airline had, but it's Mexicana, another defunct airline, which operated until 2010. Next, we move to Portugal. Portugal's current flag carrier, known as Transportes Aéreas Portugueses, or simply known as TAP Air Portugal, between 1959 operated a single chartered British European Airways Comet 4B between 1959 and 1962. This was used to operate a service between Lisbon, that is of course the current capital of Portugal, and London. And there's actually another photo of another Comet 4C, actually another version, actually belonging to Sudan Airways. Now, Sudan Airways, what is it, if you don't know? Yeah, it's coming up shortly. The next one is Saudi Arabia. The government of Saudi Arabia had actually ordered the Comet 4C for use of the King of Saudi Arabia, King Saud bin Abdulaziz. The Comet 4C was delivered in 1962, however, it crashed the following year. So that's very unfortunate. I don't know if the king died or in the crash, but however, let's continue on with our story. Our next line is South Africa. South Africa's current flag carrier, South African Airways, chartered 2 Comets from BOAC from 1953 to 1954. and one of them just crashed in 1954. Four actually. It's one of the three planes that faced an in-flight breakup. So South African Airways. Now, for additional information on South African Airways, the flag carrier of South Africa, it's currently under closures. All 12 of its aircraft are in storage, and all 21 of its destinations are suspended. And that's due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, we come on to Sudan. And Sudan Airways is actually the present-day flag carrier of Sudan, and there's the list of carriers banned from the EU. Now, on the list of carriers banned from the EU, let me explain. You all know the European Union, right? Airlines which are banned from the EU cannot operate any flights within the country that are belonging to the European Union. For example, Sudan Airways is one of them. So now let's continue on. Sudan Airways operated two new Comet 4Cs in the 1960s and the early 1970s, although all of them are retired, of course. Next we come on to the United Kingdom, which perhaps has the largest number of Comets ever operated. First time is British European Airways Air Tours. And then we have British European Airways itself. And then we have another airline, British Overseas Airways Corporation, or BOAC. The other two in-flight breakups that were faced were both by belong. So yeah, what I was saying is BOAC's two comets faced in-flight breakups. That makes it two BOAC comets and a single South African comet which broke up mid-air. So a total of three of them. This airline had a total of 10 Comet 1As delivered in the 1950s. Survivors were withdrawn, however, after the Cohen inquiry finding early comet crashes. And then a total of 19 Comet 4s were delivered from 1957. Now, if you know the current... now, these two are also defunct airlines. In fact, they both merged to form the present-day British Airways. Next we have Channel Airways. It obtained a total of 5 Comet 4Bs from British European Airways in 1970. These planes were reconfigured to a high-density 190 configuration. These were just for the conclusive tour from the United Kingdom. One of the aircraft was retired in 1977 as line expired, and the remainder were obtained by Dan Air when Channel went to receive worship in 1972. This is also a defunct airline, by the way. Our final airline in the UK is Dan Air, or Dan Air London, which is also another defunct airline. Now, if you're wondering what's the defunct airlines are actually airlines that no longer operate today. So Dan Air London had the most number of comets ever operated by an airline. It actually bought all the surviving flyable Comet 4s from the late 1960s and into the 1970s. Some of them were spares with reclamation, but most were operated on the carriers, including two charters. A total of 48 Comets of all marks were acquired by the airline. 48, that's a huge number, right? 48 out of 114. Now, 114 aircraft, that actually includes the prototypes built. Now, what is a prototype, if you might ask? Prototype is actually just like an example kind of thing for the aircraft. I'll explain you in the video, since we don't have time. Our final civilian operator was in the country of Indonesia. The airline of Merpati Nusantara Airlines had a single Comet 2 in 1972. But we're not done, so we still have to discuss the military operators. There were only two military operators in Canada and the United Kingdom. The Royal Canadian Air Force operated. The Royal Canadian Air Force 412 Squadron operated a Comet 1A from 1953 to 1963. This Comet became the Comet 1XB, actually. Now for the United Kingdom, the Royal Air Force's 51st Squadron operated the Comet C2 and 2R from 1958 to 1975. The 192 Squadron also operated the Comet C2 and 2R from 1957 to 1958. The 216 Squadron operated the Comet C2 and C4 from 1956 to 1975. The Royal Aircraft Establishment also ordered one of these. So that was it. Now, if my video hits 10 likes, I'll do another video on on, on which airlines operate the Boeing 747 and the Airbus 80. So, bye for now.